Hey guys, Matt Driver here, 5x3 Fishing, and we're here today to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. That's teaching kids how to fish. These are my boys. Maddox is 9, Nate is 7, and Reed is 3. And I get the question a lot of times of what age is a good age to start your kids to throw a bait caster? You know, we hear of people being 20, 30 years old saying they've never learned. Well, we're here today to show you an easy technique to teach your kids how to throw a bait caster. Alright, the first thing we're going to do when teaching a kid how to throw a bait caster is select the right equipment. And today we've got a Cashin CRT 6'6" spinnerbait rod. And I like the spinnerbait rod for a couple of reasons. It's very manageable for a small child. It's very lightweight, but it also has a lot of tip action so we can load that rod up and really get the bait out there. Next thing we're going to talk about is line. I prefer a heavier line over a lighter line. One, because the lighter line comes off the spool a whole lot more and you have a better chance of getting a backlash. When they're first learning, 12 to 15 pound test is the perfect diameter in my opinion. Braid is not a bad thing either. It casts very well. And the other thing is not to go too heavy on your bait on the end of your line, but right here we've got a 3/8 ounce jig. I've just cut the hook off of it for safety purposes. Alright, the next thing we're going to talk about is setting up our reel so we don't get a backlash. What we have here, very important tool, which is the line tensioner. This keeps the spool from free spooling. Some of your reels actually have other settings on the side. This one does not. This is just a reel from Academy. So what we're going to do today is just set this up where that bait barely starts to fall. And that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to step back here and do that. Alright, we hold our reel here. We're going to tension it down. Alright, the bait's not moving, and I'm going to back off that bait till it starts to slowly fall right there. And then I'm just going to stop it. Alright, we're about ready to cast. The next thing we're going to talk about is how far down the bait from the eye of the rod needs to be. I say no more than a foot when you're teaching a child how to do this. The longer the line, the more possibilities they have of loading that rod up or not loading the rod up and actually snapping their wrist and getting a backlash. Alright, after you've got your reel dialed in, you're ready to start working on technique. What we're going to do, have Maddox hold this reel right here. Make sure he's got his finger on the trigger. That way he doesn't throw the rod out in the yard. Alright, now work it back and forth. What I want to see is this motion with your wrist. The sidearm motion is the key. See how he's kind of jerky? We need to work on that. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this rod and I want to work on bending this arm just like this. See that motion right there? And what we're doing with that motion is loading up the tip of that rod, and that is very, very, very critical. So whenever I teach a child how to throw a bait caster, I always teach them to throw sidearm first. Alright, for this next part, this is probably one of the most important parts for me, is getting that finger back on the spool before it backlashes. So here's how I've been doing it. Nate's gonna put his thumb on there, and as we cast, I'm gonna keep my thumb on the spool as well. But notice Nate's thumb's there so he can get a feel for it. But what Nate's going to do is he's going to press against my thumb, so when his thumb comes up, so does mine. You ready? My thumb comes off. Ready, Nate? Push up. Boom. Do it again. So I kind of control the spool, at least until he gets a feel for it. Alright, now we're ready to do some casting. Come over here, Maddox. Alright. We talked about it earlier, getting our hands placement right. Go ahead and put your hand on there. Mash the button. We're not going to cast it. What we're going to do is we're going to work this rod, loading that rod tip up. We're going to worry about that first. Get him a feel for it. You have your hands on top of it. Alright, Maddox, you're going to push against my thumb. 1, 2, 3. Alright, hits the ground. We put our finger back on the button. Alright, after we've practiced that several times, we're going to let him go ahead and try it on his own. 1, 2, and go. Alright, good job. So get out there in the yard, guys. Work with these kids, especially before you get on the boat, because it's way more frustrating when you're out there trying to catch fish and then trying to teach. When you're at home, you've got nothing better to do. Get out there in the yard with your kids and show them how to throw a bait caster.